like that's what you want to do.
Well, now I was dancing around. I just feel kind of silly with that. Just drop us in here. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're dialing in from. Yes, we're a little lopsided today, it looks like. We're not sure if Naomi's going to, yeah, everybody just kind of lean to the side because of that gap, like down there. Yeah, the other side.
The other side.
Anyway. Yeah. Well, welcome to another episode of CollabTalk. My name is Christian Buckley. I am the Managing Director of Americas for GT Consult based out of Bellevue, Washington. I'm actually, as you can see, I've got my creepy little guy up there working out of the home office. He keeps an eye on me. But that's me, and Mark, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Mark Anderson. I'm just outside of Boston in my home office where I'm doing SharePoint stuff. Day in, day out.
Really? SharePoint stuff?
Yeah. Or my company, Simpraxis Consulting. And my clients.
Events. Oh, yeah. Well, not.
Yep, my name is Benjamin Nyland. I work here in Montreal at the ShareGate office. Yeah. And Naomi does apologize. It seems a storm has hit Houston, and she does not have power. So probably managing that right now.
She just needs to dig up a cup and some string, and we should be all set.
I know. You know, this is one of those things where I went out almost a year ago now and finally bought here for the Seattle area the generator, which guarantees that we will not have a power outage for at least 5 years because I spent way too much money on a really big generator. Yeah. So, of course, then what I need to do is just empty it of gas, and then power will go out. But I'm just checking that on a regular basis. Well, I want to again thank our companies is sponsoring this next episode, and thank you all for joining. We've got a number of topics we're just going to dive right into. Of course, Naomi was going to kick us off on one of these as well. But we're going to talk about the new Power BI Designer and apps, and what that means for Power BI, the Office 365 connector experience, and how you can automate more of the activities around Office 365, and then sticking with this administrative kind of IT pro theme apparently today, we're going to talk about DLP and the improvements to the overall management layer. And then we're going to talk again, because we did this a couple months ago, talk about the new authoring tools. And if you've been following the show, that you realize that we started talking about them, but then they ended up not having them available. And we have to set these topics a little bit in advance. Oh, did I freeze?
You froze wonderfully, too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, Ben, I'm going to turn things over to you, and I'm going to sign back in and unfreeze myself from the experience. But why don't we kick things off and start talking about Power BI Designer?
Well, first let me take a screenshot. Don't leave. Perfect. All right. Well, welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining again. We're very happy to be doing this CollabTalk at IT Unity here. And we wanted to start off with Power BI. And Power BI, you'd be wondering, well, why is this here in CollabTalk? Why are we talking? Is this Office 365? Is this SharePoint? It's an interesting story. So before we dive into the BI Designer and talk about that, I just wanted to talk to you about just a recap of what it is, what is Power BI, and maybe what is Power BI Designer before we can actually dive into it a little bit more. Essentially, think of it this way. In the past, we would do a lot of, how can I say this, torturing of SharePoint, right? open up SharePoint Designer. We would try to do conditional formatting, try to do some KPIs with that as well, again with conditional formatting, or try to do some kind of dashboard experiences with all of that torturing that we did. I'm one of the first ones to do that torturing, no worries. SharePoint Designer was my best friend for a long time. And as we moved along, it's not the same anymore. We have new things, and we don't have SharePoint Designer design view either with that. So it makes it a little bit harder. What we're seeing now is something called Power BI. Power BI is something completely separate. It's another product and does not even need to run with Office 365 at all. You can subscribe to Power BI. It comes in a freemium model, so you have a free version, and you have a sort of a pro per user version that is about, if I'm not mistaken, about $10 per user per month for the people that are going to be using Power BI. So essentially what it is it allows you to easily create some connections. So you'll talk to Salesforce even, but simply create with Power Query, some kind of queries to go get data. So you'll go get information from SharePoint list, from SharePoint document libraries, or connect to even APIs and go grab that information with what used to be Power Query, or still is Power Query really, in Excel. And then you would create cool dashboards with this, whether it's Power Pivot, Power View, Power Map, and all the powers that are in Office 365, obviously. But that's more in the Excel front. Power BI gives you an easy solution to that. It allows you with a BI designer, allows you to create that connection that it's sort of like, honestly, it's kind of like Power Query has been baked in it, so to speak. And essentially you go grab the information that you want and easily manipulate it and build a report. The reports are very, how could I say this? They don't offer you 20 billion options to play with. The purpose of Power BI and the BI designer especially is for you to quickly and easily create a query to go grab the information that you need and easily display it with interactive and dynamic applications. You can actually generate a demo out of this with the free trials. They actually give you a free dashboard with sample information that you can check out, and I definitely recommend that you do. The idea is for you to have, it works with iOS devices right now. It is still in preview. So what essentially allows you to do is to quickly create those dashboards, make them touch-friendly, available on devices so that you can play with your reports, create dashboards out of it. And frankly, you get up and running fairly quickly. I connected to a Wikipedia page that had Game of Thrones information. And by the way, how about that episode? How about that episode? All right, no, I'll stop. But essentially, I connected to the Game of Thrones wiki page where they had the information on the number of views per season per episode. It collected that straight off Wikipedia, which you can as well, and then created an interactive dashboard so I can play with and present that information and access it on devices. Now apply that with real data, and I think it'll be very, very, very interesting, especially that is in that model of, these new Office 365 experiences where you pick it up and you go right away, so to speak. What do you think, Christian? I don't know if you've seen it. It's very new. It's still in preview, so.
Yeah, that's the thing. As Mark and I were talking, is that besides reading a couple of the articles on it, that's why I was really hoping to leverage you and Naomi on this topic. And folks, this is just one of the realities of doing a show like this. Like, not everybody, we can't know about everything that is coming out. There are a few people that seem to know everything that's coming out and in detail. But this is not one of the areas where I'm certainly strong on. I know that so I have had a couple customers that have asked about some of the new capability, and I said, don't know, have to go investigate it. And they're really interested in the mobile apps and being able to access some of this stuff through the mobile experience. And they're really big on getting this data, where they were concentrating on creating almost like an extranet, but a site for their leadership team to go in and look at specifically the reports built via Power BI. And so they're having access to this data via their apps and have this rich experience via native apps for their, let's be honest, primarily iPhones, most of them. that they can go in and that's all, I believe, live now, or is that also still in preview?
No, I think
so
that's
basically in preview. Yeah. Go ahead.
the iPhone view is there, right? Sorry, Ben.
Yeah. Right now, it's only the iOS devices, basically. So essentially, you download the BI Designer little desktop app, and you connect. You create a query, whatever it is, to Excel, CSV, SharePoint, or just directly to services, the APIs of wherever you want. It depends a little bit. And then when you've got that information, you manipulate it a little bit so that you can create then a report. The reports are still very limited in what you can do with them because it is in preview and because they're targeting a different audience, business users, information workers, so that you can create your own dashboard. The purpose of it, from what I've seen, right, is really to be able to pick up and go and create reports, create dashboards, and put them on your Power BI portal, and anyone that has a license can go on their devices and play with it. And the information is interactive. You double click on part of the pie chart and everything else in the dashboard filters to what you've seen. So I invite you to check out the link. It's powerbi.com, really. And you can start a trial, and the trial does come, first of all, it's free, right? It's a freemium model, but the trial does come with sample data that you can check, interact with, and see if it's something that you like to pursue for your organization. I think it's very interesting. It doesn't mean that the old ways are the old way. Like things like Performance Point is going away. It's still there. It's just
Back in the old
whole
country, when we use Power.
Performance Point is really a very heavy BI. Really, really create cubes, analysis services. You're on another level of BI that is still amazing, but it requires quite a bit of knowledge and resources to be able to build those. The other solution is to use Excel. Excel has some add-ins such as Power Query, now comes directly with Excel, Power Pivot, Power View, that allows you to do some very interesting things that doesn't require Power BI. And if you have Office 365 or even SharePoint on-premises, you can use Excel Web Access to view and interact with these dashboards. But for Power View, sorry, I'm throwing a lot of information, but for Power View, you still need a SQL Server add-in to be able to view them on the web. But overall, it's a very, very nice experience. I've worked with it a little bit, the Power BI, the new ones with the devices, and I think it's a very, very nicely done, in fact. Another person in the community is definitely John White to check out.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, well, let me tell you about John White. Okay. Yeah, John, you say that the iOS app is available, but of course,
I think that might be John. I think that might be John in the chat window there saying, "Uh-oh."
Yeah. No, what I thought was funny was this morning. So I think he caught one of the tweets that we're going to be talking about it, and he's just like, how did I miss this? I was like, so I think somebody needs to question John White's MVP status if he's not aware of the Power BI Designer. I mean, come on. I was actually going to make a point. I was going to make a point that just following up on what you said, Ben, about it's really geared towards the information worker. I spent the first decade of my experience in the data center world, and I was a project manager for all the front end apps and working with these a very small subset of our users, these power users, that would essentially go in. We provided all of the analytical tools, so you had various SaaS modules, business objects, other tools, and we were constantly going and acquiring new data sets, integrating that in with our data warehouses, providing this into cubes or an organized data sets so that these power users could go in using this technology and carve out and provide then the reports for the masses. And so the power of what this does, using the word power again, can you feel it? Yes, yes. Is that it really is in the hand and geared towards the information worker to be able to go and build these things themselves without having to go through essentially two other tiers of people, these power user sets to go and carve off these data sets, as well as an IT project manager that is managing the raw data on the back end, and then all of your DBAs. So this is something that just kind of cuts out the middleman and allows you to go in and have a lot of control over that data and how you want that to appear. But
I think a big part of this whole story, and I know we're going to have to wrap up soon about it. I think one big part about this whole story is that the consumption side is gorgeous, right? It's you build it, you can consume it anywhere. It's any demo of this that I've seen rivals just about any UI that you've seen around slicing and dicing data, and getting there from the creation side is much easier, as you guys have been talking about. But I think the main reason people who are developers or IT pros on here today should look at it is I think your end users are just going to be totally wowed by what you're able to give them, and the look and feel of it, and how quickly they can get in and out of the data sets that they need to get into without even knowing what's in there. They don't have to know what's in the back end. They don't need to know where the data is. They get this beautiful UI that they can click or tap through and make decisions, which is really what all of this is about.
And what the other point, Ben, that you brought up about the licensing aspect of it, that is something that you need to think about. And it made me think of in the early days of what is now Office 365. So back when I was at Microsoft, when I'd go in and talk to yes. When I would talk to customers, one of the points of feedback, strong feedback, was, why do I need to pay for a separate search as a service? So when FAST was acquired, and to go and set up that separate service, and the additional licenses that were required, they said, look, SharePoint search should just work. This should be part of SharePoint Authoring, not that I'm paying for something in addition. I know it's a bit more involved than just because there was search, didn't work very well back in the day, but it improved, and now we have fast search that's integrated. When you're talking about the Power BI, says you are talking about the types of users. There's a couple different types of users, but you are talking about additional licensing, additional cost for using this once the service is live. So just be aware of that. And that's something within the admin console that you can at any time go in and look at, how if you go out, maybe you have 500 people that are in Office 365, but you may only pick up 20 of these Power BI licenses and distribute those accordingly. So you need to watch how that's being used. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, definitely. On that licensing, it's free, but it does start costing after if you start reaching a certain number of I forget the details, and it's all on the page, and depending on what you want in terms of features. But it does indeed start costing. However, for small or even medium organizations, and again, it's not necessarily all your users. It may be for the executive and a few other people that build the reports, of course. But it's definitely very, very nice. As John is saying down below in the chat, it's in preview. There's a lot of updates coming to allow you to manipulate a little bit more the dashboards and the reports. But honestly, right now, definitely worth checking out. It's a free download, everything. Download the BI Designer. You instantly get a sample report that you can check out. Go connect your data, see how you can play with it, and you'll get an idea. It's very, very straightforward and simple enough to pick up and go and learn as you go for the most part. Now, it doesn't mean either that it's the solution to all your problems, right? It's a nice way to get into BI and create some quick dashboards, and I think we're seeing that overall Office 365, right? We're seeing that because, the video portal, we're seeing the authoring portal we're going to be talking about today. We're seeing the people portal, and this is, for me, it's not Office 365 per se, but it is a sort of BI portal. It's Power BI. So definitely, I'm not going to linger on this topic anymore. I know we've talked quite a bit, but the last thing I do want to mention is that it does allow you to do some query refreshes. That means that you can say every hour, refresh the query so that your data is always dynamic and up to date with the information. And that is a big plus in its value. John has a great blog post. I don't know if you can link it on the licensing demystified and I had asked him to do a refreshing how-to guide. I don't know if it's up or there's some information. Maybe you can link it in the chat as well, and we'll put it up in the resources as well.
Yeah, we'll definitely add it up there. So, well, thanks for that, Ben. And Ben, I'm going to let you, since this was actually your topic as well, but well, the next topic here, we're going to talk about the Office 365 connector experience. Maybe you can intro that as well.
To be honest, I don't remember because I can't say that I remember anything about this. I'm sure it wasn't Naomi, perhaps, that submitted this. I'm going to try to put this on the person's. No, to be honest with you, I wouldn't be very up to date with this one in particular.
This is all proving that we really need Naomi. She is very important to us.
She's trying to. This is a tactic to try and get her contract extended.
Yeah, she's out there. She's out there watching, laughing.
I know. Well, I've got John shared a link. Is that to your? Is that the? You're actually talking about the licensing, the Power BI stuff. Yeah, we could talk about Power BI for another 10 minutes.
We should just let John talk, actually.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think we're going to need to come back to this topic and maybe add it in. I know we've got our topic selected for July, and we'll have to come back to it. And talk about it at length when Noam is back. So,
we have tons of other topics.
Yeah, the audience who is, I'm sure, was just waiting for this one topic. This is why they're here. Okay, we're going to move forward on that.
I'm going to watch that participant number now.
Yeah, I know. It's just going to drop off. This is one of my favorite words there. What's the scuttlebutt around data loss prevention? Yeah, for those that are Dwight Schrute fans, that's his words. But DLP is something that has been, for those in the administration space, within SharePoint Online, has been around for a few years. And there have been third-party solutions that have provided data loss prevention, white labeling, topics of sensitive information, scanning of content that's going in. And so it's very exciting to see these capabilities come to SharePoint Online. Now, there's really kind of two ways that SharePoint goes in and scans this. So one is that there's a kind of a background scanning capability. So as users are creating or updating content in the system. And I should say that this is, right now, is this capability that's in the new Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. I think that's it. So the 2016 versions that are in preview where this is possible. But somebody correct me if I'm wrong there. But so as content is created, it goes in and looks at defined rules around sensitive topics, types of content. So like Social Security numbers would be one. Banking data, routing numbers. You can go in and set up some of these policies so that the system identifies them as the content is created. And the other way that it identifies sensitive information is when it goes in and does the indexing as it does on a regular basis. So there's kind of two ways what it does. It'll essentially, if it identifies content that you've either set up as sensitive content types, set up your own policies or the out-of-the-box rules, and creates an incident report and then can flag and take certain actions around what it identifies. And kind of the future of this is that you'll be able to then build in these DLP rules into part of the, as I say, the advanced management layer and do more automation around this. You can kick off workflow because of that. You can automatically suspend activity or halt the sharing, the visibility of the content. So a lot of actions that you can take to be very proactive around identification of this sensitive information. I don't know, guys, if you have any other thoughts to add to that topic.
This is one of these things that I think has a really horrible name. Data loss prevention means sort of nothing, right? It makes me feel like, I'm not going to drop my hard disk down a sewer. But there's a hell of a lot more to this, right? It's sort of an auditing kind of thing. It's a compliance kind of thing. Ben's got a lot more useful stuff to say, but I'm going to get my words in here. And so I think it's one of those terms that we see, and we really have to dig way into it to understand the volume of stuff that it covers. mean, you were touching on some stuff with credit card numbers and social security numbers and things like that. I mean, that's a huge concern, especially these days with all these breaches. And so understanding what that means and how it fits into your organizational compliance and governance story, I think is really important. So Ben, why don't you say something smart?
Honestly, DLP. It's funny because I was just watching the video, catching up on Ignite, trying to watch 1 or 2 videos a week for the sessions that I had planned on going to. But essentially, it was talking about a couple of things on security, and they were talking about the compliance center. So in your Office 365, you're going to start seeing this compliance center, which is actually there. And I'm not going to say anything negative, but they had talked about it a lot last year at the SharePoint conference in 2014. And what they had announced there to come out has still not come out. I know there's been a lot of restructuring and reprioritizations of things. So I'm hoping that now that they've announced it again at Ignite, that we're going to see them soon. But the idea is for you to be able to create some of these rules, as Christian was mentioning, and that it will try to protect the users. But the idea is to, on top of that, provide additional. How do I say this in English? Man, my French again. Directly in the UI, right? Say it in French. Directement dans l'interface graphique des utilisateurs. Donc, en fait, ce que je vous recommande, c'est d'aller... Non.
I just soaking that up.
No, but the idea...
my retention is not so good at that, but yes.
The idea is for you that when you create rules, it actually helps the users by being present in the interface wherever you're using it. Whether it's in Office web apps, whether it's directly in Outlook. The idea of the compliance center is to really provide rules and sets of guidelines and whatever that may be, but across the entire workloads. Now, I figured out their words for the products that we're used to. It's workloads. So the Exchange workload, the SharePoint workload, and obviously Skype for Business is included in Exchange because most things that you do are directly in there. So you'll have things like if there's a URL that you click on, it'll check if it's a spam and redirect you, and it'll seamless to the user or give you some additional information that is very cool. But they do have plans to go further than this with DLP. So as we're going to see, what they showed in the session was that it's going to go as far as check things like Twitter. So if you want to check Twitter for now, again, I don't know the details. This is brand new. It was mentioned quickly during a session. So until it comes into our tenants and we can actually test it. But the idea is to say that data loss prevention goes beyond your users on the platform that they're using. You want to check a lot of other things. You want to check the devices that they're on and that they don't copy something on another app that's going to be using it. And more we're seeing OneDrive for Business adding that layer of protection in the app directly, being able to wipe the app from a device, but just the professional data, not the personal data. Be careful. But that's what we're seeing in the whole data loss prevention or DLP. I know, me too. Honestly, I agree with Mark. It's a complicated word, and it means I'm not exactly sure. But the features that they put under that hat that I'm seeing in Office 365, they're pretty cool. So the example that everyone's giving is the credit card information, but the idea is you create rules, it goes and checks literally using the search engine, and the e-discovery works in a very similar way. And based on these rules, you'll be able to set actions directly in your policies. So whether to warn people, to prevent, to discard the attachment in the email. And again, as we're moving forward, it's not going to be just SharePoint. Remember, the Office 365 is the combination of these workloads together. So everything coming out now is something that provides a solution to that combination of workloads together. Did that sound smart enough, Mark?
Almost, yes. No, but I think that that's actually the point I was going to make, Ben, as well. That it's not just a SharePoint Online. It is across Office 365, and we'll see it expanded that capability. And you're right. And I don't like the use of another acronym. I think Microsoft has a long and rich and storied history with acronyms, poorly chosen. But The way that I refer to this is a key capability in the management layer. That's why I added that to the title of this. So as you think of that, going into the admin center within Office 365 and start seeing more and more that capability. Mark, it's not an acronym factory. It's an acronym generator. It's a machine, kind of like what's the machine that broke the code in World War II? What is that called again? Enigma. It's kind of like the Enigma.
That was a great movie.
It's slightly less helpful. It generates acronyms.
And John's right. Enigma made the codes. The code breakers broke the codes. But I mean, my other point is valid. Most of these are not acronyms. DLP is not an acronym. It is an initialization because we do not pronounce it. We don't say DLP. So there's my contribution to this.
Well, that's why I switched it. I used your sewer loss prevention, added this little O in loss, and we could call it slop.
Yeah. Another thing that I've seen about DLP that I found really interesting, getting back to whatever the topic at hand may be, is as I remember in one of those demos that you mentioned, Ben, you actually can control even like the copy and paste that someone can do on their phone, right? Which is frustrating as hell to the person who's actually trying to copy and paste, but it can get down to sections of the screen, as I remember seeing in that demo. I may be remembering it wrong, but you know, when you've got something that's protected in certain ways, you can't do a copy on my, I wouldn't be able to do it on my iPhone and paste it somewhere else. So it's really, it's pretty pervasive. The thing that makes me wonder, of course, is what's wrong with just taking a picture of your screen and OCRing it, but I guess that's a whole different challenge.
So, you know, there have been other third-party solutions out for, I remember in the late 90s beginning to see tools that would go in and based on content. I don't remember, it probably wasn't the late 90s, so early 2000s, but that actually would go in and redact sensitive information in docs. So there's been that kind of capability, and so I don't know if that's on the roadmap. I don't want to put that in anybody's head, but...
Well, I actually put things together. Everything they had announced in terms of DLP or Compliance Center, I put a quick list of what they announced at Ignite so we can quickly mention them, but essentially they have the Compliance Center, obviously, that's coming out, the automatic archive scaling for emails, for mailboxes. So if you have an archive mailbox, it'll automatically scale instead of calling in Microsoft and asking for that. They have something called Advanced Threat Protection that's going to add that extra layer again. Drive shipping for Office 365, so you can ship your drives and they'll take care of it if you have a lot to send. The e-discovery of Office 365 is going to be integrated with a product called Equivio. Microsoft bought a product a couple of, I don't know how many months ago, called Equivio, and essentially as they are integrating still, right now they're just putting the e-discovery available in that product that provides, it's been actually approved in the legal system. Now, there's probably insert proper word and sentence there, but essentially, you know, when you're dealing with courts and you're dealing with litigation, you can't just say, well, the computer said that's all the information that we could find on this particular topic. You actually, before, you'd need specific lawyers, and they did a study and they approved that product, Equivio, which is probably no wonder why Microsoft acquired it afterwards. So that's going to be integrated with the e-discovery as well for that whole management layer. Auditing for Azure AD, Exchange, SharePoint, Office 365. The new management activity API. So developers, and there are already some out there, well, I'm not going to say where I work, but essentially that are able to work with this activity API so that you can create dashboards, you can create all that logging information. There's a lot of login attempts in an office in London, but we don't have an office in London. So you'll be able to create sort of, things like this, and third-party products will as well. The Activity API is going up in June in preview, if I'm not mistaken. They're adding DLP to the OneDrive app, so that means for the OneDrive app, personal and business is coming together already, and we're going to add and see that. And for the rest of the Office 2016 clients, So Outlook 2016, Mac and Windows, and everything else, we're going to see that added DLP features coming to that. And lastly, Office 365 device protection is going to be available directly in Office 365 as well. So you can manage the devices straight from your Compliance Center as well. So definitely keep a close eye on the Compliance Center. Sorry to interrupt. I realized there was quite a lot of bullets in that.
That's a great list. It raises one question in my mind. When it comes to OneDrive, DLP with OneDrive is obviously a very important thing because that's where whole files live. Is that something that we're waiting till Windows 10 for? Is the engine that OneDrive is using in Windows 8.1 actually going to have that stuff in it, or is it another sort of push off until Windows 10? Do you know? I don't.
That's a good question. Yeah. I have no idea, but from what I remember in the sessions and what I've heard, when they were talking about DLP with OneDrive, I think they were talking more about the OneDrive apps on devices, but definitely would have to check.
Right. But there would.
Sorry, go ahead, Mark.
Sorry, obviously there would be a component to that on the desktop on your Windows machine. So. I'm not sure. I think that's the kind of thing that, whether they're doing it intentionally or not, I'm not going to get into, but something that will just push people into Windows 10 so they get some of these compliance pieces that may not sort of slide underneath Windows 8 or earlier.
I was going to just kind of on this topic, just a thought came to my mind about really what happens around the partner ecosystem as Microsoft goes and builds a lot of these capabilities in the platform. Now, let me preface that by saying that there is a difference from Microsoft's standpoint. There is a difference between providing tools and technology or opening something up to the partner ecosystem for an on-prem platform versus an online hosted service. There are certain things that Microsoft needs to be able to provide, whereas they can say, well, we provide the framework and the tools, but it's really on-prem. It's a Swiss Army knife. You'll build it to be what you need it to be, and go buy the other tools if you want these other security capabilities. Microsoft, it's a different ball game between the two. But I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts on what adding this kind of capability does to because there are several large ISVs that have similar capability. What does this do to the partner opportunity?
I'm going to go on that because obviously we're watching that as well, being an ISV that's going in that space as well. But the idea, I think it's to be able to shift. If you stay as a partner, as an ISV, as a developer, and you have something and you don't change it, you don't adapt with what's coming. Of course, it's a time right now. Everything is changing. Even the small ISV has a spot to going and develop it. So there's an opportunity for everyone. And I think Satya had said it well during the keynote. The opportunities are there, but we actually have to grab them. They're providing solutions so that people will get on and adopt Office 365, right? Because a lot of customers are going to say, well, why should I go to, say, Office 365? Because it's missing this in terms of security. You need to provide that for me. So obviously, Microsoft does a lot of it, and we're seeing these DLP solutions and all of that. However, as we're seeing, the API, they've also opened up the Activity API to build these other third-party and new ISV and take advantage of these new opportunities. And even during the session, they showcased 2 third-party products during their session for things that they do not do themselves. And actually, that example I was talking about with the attempted login attempts, that's not built in with Office 365. Office 365 allows you to audit some very simple controls and allows you to do what you need. Just like the video portal allows you to do many things, but not necessarily everything that people need in a video portal, where they need another third party to build a third party app, right? Just like the video portal is, but using the same, let's say, groundworks and build some more to it. And I think that there's definitely a lot of opportunity there, but if you don't change in this time where everything is changing, then yeah, it could be very difficult, but at the same time, it could be a great opportunity to go with this new, I don't know how to say this modern workplace. Can I put that buzzword in there?
You say about
I don't know, Mark. You're a developer, so from your perspective.
Well, I mean, I think that the third-party, whatever you want to call them, all the people like you, the people like your company, are always going to have space to do good work. I mean, to me, a lot of what comes out of Microsoft ends up being that 80% out of 100, right? The 80-20 rule. And the 80% isn't necessarily easy, but it's the sort of the norm, the not a low standard, but a sort of middle. It's 80%. And then that last 20% for organizations that have more complex needs is the hard part. And that hard part is something that ISVs ought to be jumping on, because that's where the definite need, the clear sales opportunities are, and people are going to spend the money on it. The other piece is that I think since they're opening up almost everything as it comes along on Office 365 with an API, the interesting things that you can do by combining the data coming out of different APIs is, it's open to the imagination. Anyone who has some imagination can start doing interesting stuff like that. I wish I had that idea, Ben. Don't point at me. So, there's lots of room, whether it's an app or add-in or whatever the hell we call it these days, or a full-blown product like yours. I think there's lots of room to combine that data in different ways, and that's never going to go away. And it may be like some other things where Microsoft eventually builds out that capability internally, but the ISVs, the third-party tools people, are the ones who are going to get there first.
All right. Well, in the time we've got left here, I'm going to jump to topic number 4, because we did talk.
Which you've reworded.
Yeah. Why are we?
I like how you reword the topics before you actually start. That's not the title he showed us literally 10 minutes before the session started.
Yeah, so the new authoring tools. So the last time, I'm trying to remember, it was in January or February that we wanted to talk about it. We had expected to learn more about them, and then nothing came out. And we're like, we thought we were going to be bleeding edge. We were going to have the info and be able to talk about it in that other session, that other episode. And unfortunately, there was not a lot. There was a lot of speculation, and we're always happy to speculate about what's going on.
We had fun talking, but it turns out it wasn't about what actually happened.
I find it most interesting to read between the lines, what was said, especially what was not said. And so, I think the fact that we've not seen a blog in days on this topic means that Microsoft might be getting ready to pull the plug on all new authoring tools, or not. No, but I mean, probably the experience, just to kind of lead things into it, was that we did see months ago, was the introduction of Sway, and that was one new authoring experience that's being integrated into the Office suite and into Office 365. And I think that when we started seeing some of the tools for the first time at the Ignite event, people even referred to it. Hey, this is kind of like a Sway-like interface, a Sway-like authoring experience. But there are a number of tools that are out there. And Mark, I mean, you were playing around with the blog capability this morning. I mean, any thoughts on that?
Yes. You froze there for a second. The term that we use all the time is canvas, and to me, lots of times when we say the word canvas, it really doesn't feel like a canvas. But this new authoring tool in the I see your eyes moving, man. This new authoring tool that we have in Office 365, I have 2 links. One's called Blog, one's called Stories. One lands in a different place than the other, so it's a little confusing. But the Stories one really does give us what feels like an empty canvas. We have a very large space that we can drop pretty much anything into. And that's a very different experience than what we've had certainly in SharePoint. We've had more rigid publishing sort of standards, which is often the right sort of governance model. But this canvas in these new authoring tools feels much more liberating. I think that we get a lot more freedom to write whatever we want, and that may or may not be a good thing for a lot of organizations. But we can take things from Office documents and drop them right into our posts. We can add images. We can change the sort of the structure of the page pretty easily. It's a very quick, very easy way to start creating content that goes up on a web page. So that's a huge step forward to me, because I think, I've actually done sessions at conferences for several years now about how the SharePoint user experience has always been considered to be a bit subpar. That's the polite way to put it. And this, I think, will feel really natural to people, because it's not that different than opening a Word document and having it just be a big white page and being able to type stuff. So I think it's going to feel very good to the people who want to use it. I think it passes my mom test, which is one of my big things to understand whether a piece of technology is going to be successful. If my mom would be able to handle it, she's okay with me doing this, by the way. We talk about it. She's a very smart lady, but this kind of stuff, So, this passes the mom test. Yeah, she's a CEO over at what's that company? IBM. No, she's not any of those things. So I think it's really gonna be refreshing to the people who get it. Where are we on the rollout of this? It's in my tenant, but I think maybe because I have first release, or has it gotten to everybody? Everybody in there? No, still in first release. Then you're moving your head both ways. I can't do. So you may or may not have this experience in yours, correct?
First release only.
Yeah, first release only. So if you want to check out some of these new authoring experiences, and I hate that word experiences, you might want to click on first release in a test tenant or something, so that you can see what it is we're talking about. I like where it's heading.
And I'll jump on that.
Actually, let me stop you for 1 second, Ben. The other thing that I think is exciting about this, and mark my words, this way of using a canvas and writing things is something that I think you'll see more of. So I'll leave it at that. But I think that this kind of workspace is going to show up in other places, and people are going to like it. Go, Ben.
No, absolutely, 100%.
Go, Ben, go.
100% agree with you on that. As a lot of it is going to be this way, and we were talking about, and we haven't talked too much about the whole SharePoint Designer not being in, and the talking about workflows and how's that going to be out. I wouldn't be surprised to see something that's similar, easy to start to create, and really focus on the UX a lot more, and actually the end user using it. I've done a lot of research on the blog when it came out, and wrote that blog post. And it made me understand also how it works underneath. Because I'm always curious. I come from the SharePoint world, so I want to understand, how are things created? What's the content type? What are they building? And so I even understood the video portal a little bit more. So just to give you an idea, there's this site collection called hub/portals/hub. And in there's a document library with 2 pages. And that's it. One is the video, for the video portal, and it's a single-page app. And the other one is for this story, this blogging system, which is actually called Point Publishing. So it was interesting when you said it's like a publishing feature, because the single-page app that runs that entire system is pointpublishing.aspx. And this page, when you navigate to it, will allow you to either view the ones that you've created already. So what happens is each individual user, and we're going to probably open up some discussions after that, but every single user in your Office 365 gets a sort of a new site collection for themselves that is hidden inside the /portals managed path. So under your tenant.com/portals /say Benjamin Nyland, there's a new site collection there with a document library for the stories. And every time I create a new blog or a new story, it creates a JSON file that's technical talk, but it basically writes in code what I wanted to write as a blog post. And then when you go and look at the story, you look at your blog, and you're at the single page app in the hub. And I know I'm going very technical right now, but it's actually looks at who is the user that's logged in right now, finds your site collection, finds the blog post that you want, and always presents it in that nice responsive way. That's how they can control the experience to be responsive on all devices, that it looks the same for everyone all the time, is because everyone is always on the same page, right? Literally. The data that's shown on the page is stored somewhere else. Yeah. It's kind of like search-driven sites. You create content in a list. You create content in a list, so to speak, and then there's a page, a search page, that goes and gets what in that list and displays it as a search-driven page. It's very similar in that concept. Every user gets his site collection. The blog post that they create gets stored in there. And then when you experience the blog as it's supposed to, as the story that it is, it actually goes and pulls that and shows it to you. So it's very, I wouldn't be surprised to start seeing new single page apps. Is that how you call them? Yeah, single page apps in that document library for new workloads that we're going to see, possibly even workflows or whatever it may be called in the future. So very interesting to see. And I don't know about you guys. Tell me what you think. But it's interesting because before we would go to our My Site, right? That's every user in the organization gets a personal site collection, which now we call OneDrive for Business, whatever, but it's still the personal site collection. And now every user gets a personal site collection in the /portals managed path. And the only thing left in our old My Sites is OneDrive for Business. So I wouldn't be surprised to eventually see them build the new OneDrive for Business in these new portals site collections and one day doing a shift. But this is all me speculating and making it up as I go here on CollabTalk right now.
Well, there's a couple of things that you said that are very intriguing to me now that I know that you've dug in there and found some of these bits and pieces like that link I just put in the chat window. You're saying that the data from these authoring experiences is actually going into a JSON file, the things that we type in there? Did I hear you right?
That's right.
So, okay,
that's
so
right.
that...
Yeah, I get a personal site collection.
Yeah.
So that personal site collection, a document library, and then when you create that first blog post, every pieces, they're called content zones, or I forget exactly, yeah. And when you click on save, it stores it. That's why they can do the automatic saving, I'm guessing. But it gets stored in a JSON file, and then the single page application actually pulls based on the ID, right? Because there's another document library for the images that you store, and they use a lookup column, or so to speak, with the ID. It's all in the blog post I mentioned, but yeah, go ahead.
That's very cool to me because that's getting away from the sort of legacy SharePoint architecture, right? It's moving into more modern web development tools. We know they're heading that way. We see pieces of that in all of the new modern experiences that they're giving us. The other great thing about that is because JSON is so ubiquitous, we can start to think about many other uses for that same content. The sort of holy grail of content management is you write something once and it shows up in all the places it's supposed to in whatever format it needs to be, right? And that's undoubtedly part of how they're doing a lot of the responsive side of things is that whether or not you're getting it in the same page or not, it's the same data in the back end. Now, SharePoint's always done that with publishing pages, but it's been how many years in now are we? 13 years, 15 years, something like that. It's a pretty clunky back end compared to what we're seeing them do now. I don't know. Sometime in the 1860s, I think it was all invented. So the cotton gin and SharePoint somewhere, yeah. So I think some of that stuff that you've dug into is telegraphing to us some really interesting capabilities down the road that they may not be working on at all, but to me, the way they're storing stuff is, again, so much more modern and so much more portable that I expect that we'll see more things come out on top of it. in a much more rapid pace than we've seen in the past. Which is what they're telling us.
I think lastly, I just want to say I almost wish I was a developer right now, because it just gave me some ideas. I'm looking at Delve. I'm looking at these portals, the authoring portal, and it shows me more of a showcase product. And I can tell that if I can use the same way, right, have a single page application that people create in document library, some JSON files, and then create an authoring experience, what's to stop me internally for SharePoint 2016 or for Office 365 to create a very similar development story, right? Just create my own authoring app because I didn't like the one that Microsoft offered, for example. I don't see that so far off. I just can't code. But otherwise, it feels like there's a lot of opportunity there for non-SharePointers to say, look, we'll just store the JSON in a document library, and then we'll pull it in our single page app. People don't need to care about that. And I think that's very, very fun.
I think, with some of the way you have a number of companies, Bright Star, Blue Rooster, Dynamic Owl, others that are creating these intranet stories, I think I don't know what their roadmaps are, but I suspect that they are looking at creating some of their own authoring experiences through those tools as well. I'd be surprised if we don't see something. I have no idea what you just added to the...
I just posted that in there because I opened up that page, that authoring page, to see what Ben was talking about. That's all the HTML that's in that whole page. The only thing that matters is this is that div, right? So they're going to use that div and poke the whole single page app right in there. So that's what Ben's talking about. So that page itself is incredibly light, and they've got code running on the top, and there's some assembly declarations up above, but this is the HTML. So you could see actually building some stuff like this on Ben, the soon-to-be developer, could be building these single-page apps to do other interesting authoring or publishing type things. I'll help you, Ben.
Hey, well, guys, so we're just about out of time. I did want to just take a minute if there are any other topics that you're following, things that are happening that people need to be aware of. Anything, Mark, Ben, anything going on?
I posted one random link in this resources window.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Mark.
I'll just mention it because I sensed that there was going to be a deathly silence. This post, the link up there, that's What is Code by Paul Ford. This thing's been making the rounds on Twitter and Facebook and stuff. It's a really interesting, very long article about what is code all about, why are coders so weird, all that sort of stuff. I found it fascinating. I haven't read every bit of it. And if you go to it in a full-size browser, it's actually an incredible example of interactive content beyond what I've seen in many other places. There are little games in there. There's lots of little things you can click on and pop up. It's just a very interesting, here I'm going to use the word experience to go through that article. And I think a lot of people will find it interesting. And that has nothing to do with Microsoft or anything else, but I think it's got a lot of content in it that would help explain to people why we're the way we are. If you need to talk to somebody like your mom.
And Ben, any final thoughts?
No, honestly, I don't think anything was mentioned recently, so it's all still trying to catch up on groups. Pulling all of that together and figuring out how that's going to work with the new things. I think it's been a pretty quiet couple of weeks. Maybe they're recovering from Ignite still. We'll see.
Well, this is the end of the Microsoft. This is the end of the Microsoft fiscal year, so we're of course starting to see the announcements of some leadership changes. There's an article on what is this, TechCrunch today, where we see that some people are moving around. We tend to see it around this time of the year. As John says, it's a biggie. There usually are some big ones this time of year. So if you're interested in Microsoft watching, there's an article for you.
Of course, for those that are participating, we've got the first or second week in July. The second week in July in Orlando is the Microsoft's Worldwide Partner Conference. I'll be attending. Ben, are you going to be there?
Oh.
So I think Naomi and I are both planning to be there. I believe she's going to be there. So if you are planning to be at WPC, we'll see you there. Otherwise, just to close things out, thanks again to our companies for sponsoring this event. Our next one, of course, you can keep the conversation going at #CollabTalk. For those that participate in the Tweet Jam, we are going to have a Tweet Jam. I believe it's at the end of next week. Announcements are going to go out, I think, tomorrow. So we'll have another exciting Tweet Jam. And then here's our contact information, as always, on Twitter, via Gmail. Please reach out to us. And our next episode, episode 7, worst episode ever, July 21st. Please join us. You can, as always, go to itunity.com/go/CollabTalk and get to the latest schedule. And please register and join us and tell your friends and family. CollabTalk makes a great stocking stuffer. So with that,
it's time to get that holiday shopping going.
That's right.
Costco has their Christmas decorations. It's time now.
It is time. I know. Well, thanks everybody for joining. Maybe next time we'll throw in that one topic that we dropped off. Yeah. But thanks a lot, guys.
Cheers.